All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another YouTube video. I know Mondays are usually the worst day of the week, but I thought I'd try and brighten up your guys' day just a little bit by releasing another YouTube video. In today's episode, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be discussing the secondary towers of the Kingdom Rush franchise, also known as the bonus towers that you see throughout various levels inside of the main and post mini campaigns of each game. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's just hop right into it. First things first, on the chopping block, we have the Trolls. The Trolls Tower is kind of interesting in that you have not only barrack troops that are melee that can regenerate their health, but you also have ranged attackers, the Troll Champions. Now, these guys are actually pretty solid, okay? Like in the original game, they're pretty decently tanky, and they deal a decent amount of damage. Definitely not as much as they did in the original edition of Kingdom Rush, but still much relatively still comparable to their former selves as far as how well they perform. And I feel like they do their job pretty darn well. Are they broken? No. Obviously, there are quite a few enemies that can take them down, especially if you're playing in the Heroic and Iron challenges and you use these guys extensively too much. You kind of need to be careful with where you use them. So it definitely makes sense that these guys probably belong in A tier. Again, the other reason being, it's a cool looking tower. I love the design of it. Fits the levels that it's in perfectly, and it is relatively cheap to get these guys. And while they're strong, they're not necessarily broken. So that is why we are going to put them there. Next up, we have the Spear Maidens, the Jungle Maiden Warriors from Kingdom Rush Frontiers, in the first level of the second act of the main campaign, the Makwa levels. So these Jungle Spear Maidens have a whirlwind attack that does deal area damage, if I remember correctly. Pretty decently tanky. They deal decent damage. Not my favorite tower in the world as far as design is concerned, so they do lose a couple points for that. But overall, kind of solid, kind of like the Trolls. I wouldn't say they're as strong or durable, however, because they cannot regenerate their HP while in combat unless you get the star upgrades for them. I'm going to probably put these guys at B tier. Again, they're not C tier because of how cheap they are and you can quickly spam them. So I think that they definitely belong in this tier. Moving on from that, we have the Shrine of Regnos inside of the Deep Devil's mini campaign. Now, this tower deals area damage, and it can be up to over 2,000. Do I need to say any more? I mean, yes, it has a pretty long recharge time, but it instantly recharges if you buy the next tier, and it has 3 tiers, starting with 500 gold and then an additional 500 gold for the second tier and 500 gold for the third tier, for a grand total of 1,500 gold. You're buying quite a bit of raw damage. Oh, did I also mention that damage is true damage? So true area damage upwards of 2,000 on the high end. That is pretty ridiculous. All right. So is this tower busted? Yes. We're putting it in S tier. Next up, we have the Pirate Watchtowers. So it has 2 upgrades, one of which helps it to shoot quite a bit faster than its normal attack does if you max it out. There's a noticeable difference in that regard. And then there's also the Parrots, which can bring bombs to drop on top of enemies that are, kind of moving throughout the level. Now, the Pirate Watchtowers are only in the first level of the mini campaign. However, I believe that they do make a difference, and if you don't use them, then you are kind of screwing yourself over, especially since on that top area of the first level, Port Tortuga, there is quite a few gunboats, and those will come out and shoot barrages of artillery shells at your barrack troops, and they deal splash damage. And let me tell you something. If they manage to knock out your hero at a crucial point in the level, it spells bad news for you guys. All right, they can just wipe out hordes of skeletons, barrack troops, your hero, it don't matter. Those things deal a lot of damage. So you want to make sure that you have these Pirate Watchtowers maxed out. Pretty cheap, too, to get the abilities. The speed increase is a lot cheaper than the Parrots. The Parrots, I still feel like, do make a difference. However, for, 200, 350 goldish, somewhere around that neighborhood, you're getting, 20 to 40 damage, splash damage. All right, so is it worth it to buy the second upgrade? Not as much as the first, in my opinion. It's just something that's nice to have later on if you happen to have the gold to afford it. But most likely, you're going to be spending your gold on other parts of your defense. But overall, a really solid tower. It has good range, too. I'm going to go ahead and put this at A tier. Okay, it's a strong tower. It does decently well when you max out the upgrades. They are worth it for the most part. I would definitely say that this is a strong tower, but definitely not broken. Next up, we have the cannons. The cannons you can purchase to fire at enemies inside of the level Buccaneer's Den. All right, so you can pay, I think it's up to 65 gold to fire like 3 cannon shots, and they each deal quite a bit of damage. Is this worth it? I mean, you could basically solo the level with just this ability, okay? Which is pretty freaking nuts if you think about it. Just spawn kill all the enemies at the top, deal with the ones on the right with your hero and reinforcements. I mean, Dune Terrors, yeah, obviously are going to be a problem if you're not careful, as there are quite a few of them. Scorpions can also kind of cause you some issues later on, and obviously big beefy units such as Executioners will be able to withstand quite a few blasts, but you can just use your hero to try and isolate those if at all possible. You know, again, with the money that you spend, this is kind of a double-edged sword. If you don't get that money back, you're screwed. You know what I mean? So, like, if you don't kill the enemies within, like, a couple shots, or basically bring their health bars down to almost nothing, you're kind of toast. It's kind of a waste of money. And then there's also aiming it correctly, right? So it's kind of like the Rain of Fire. You want to aim it a little bit ahead of your targets so that they have time to go through their animation and then actually hit with their projectiles. So, you know, I think it's a decent ability. Is it great? Nah, not really. I'm going to actually put this at B tier. Next up, we have the Genies and the Legionnaires' Barracks. All right, first off, I love this tower's design. It's great, okay? So it gets props for the artwork. The Genies are broken, okay? They can literally turn any enemy into, like, a random item. Like, once every, like, I don't know how long the duration is, but it's a decent amount. But it's basically an insta-kill. And for the amount of gold that you're paying for the Genies, which, by the way, are much, much stronger than the Legionnaires, in melee combat, it's just ridiculous. Oh, did I mention that insta-kill can be done at range? It doesn't have to be melee. They can just straight up turn an Immortal or a Scorpion or something really threatening into a random item, and it's just gone. Poof. Bye-bye. Which is really freaking cool. So it definitely helps in a pinch. The one weakness that they obviously have is the Scorpions. If they do get into melee combat with them, they will get poisoned. They don't have any armor, at least that I can recall. I don't believe they do. And the other thing is they are very susceptible to Desert Archers, so you do need to micro them out of the way in that case. But I overall think this tower is very good. I like it. I'm going to put it at A tier. Legionnaire Archers. These are in the first couple levels of the first act of the main campaign of Frontiers. They deal 5 to 10 damage. They're just there. You can't sell them. They're kind of just nice to have, not obviously broken or OP. I don't feel like they really make or break the level. I feel like you could do without them and still win the level very easily, but that's just me personally. I would say these are probably one of the worst, like, extra towers to have in the franchise. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to put them... Where am I going to put you guys? I'm going to put you at D tier. Because it's not like they don't do anything, right? They're not completely useless, but they're far from S tier. Next up, we have the Dwarven Barracks Hall. I'm not going to lie. Again, kind of like the Legionnaire Archers. They're nice to have, but I feel like you could do without them. Their abilities are okay. I like how you can upgrade their armor, kind of like the Holy Order Paladins. Their damage buffs are nice, but I don't really think it's enough to make a difference. And the last one where they get a little bit of regeneration is basically just useless. And for the gold that you sink into this tower, you can sink it into other towers elsewhere. Again, not completely useless, but I feel like you could do without it. It's definitely not the worst one, not the best. So we're going to put it in D tier. Okay, the Dwarven Bastions. I think that's what these are called. So this is the Dwarven Hall. This is the Dwarven Bastion. This is like an archer mixed with artillery, mixed with, oh my god, how freaking strong is this thing? Dude, on the high end, if you upgrade this thing's projectiles so that it deals more damage, it's like 125 to 155 damage. Why wouldn't you upgrade this? The other ability allows it to throw a keg, which deals explosive damage. So these things are stupidly good. Okay, Myrmidons, no problem. Freaking hordes of enemies, no problem. You know, strong enemies like Blaze Fangs, no problem. Even Savants, they can, to a limited extent, deal with it. If you guys know the level that's just before the final boss of the main campaign of Frontiers, I forget the name of the level, unfortunately. But where you see two of these and a Dwarven Hall on the bottom row, along with Rur and Longbeard, they can basically hold their own on that one lane alone for a good portion of the level. It's ridiculous. MMLH just did a challenge where he was mirroring both setups. So 2 archers and a barracks up top, 2 archers and a barracks on the bottom. and he did it with Boneheart, and he was able to actually beat the level. Okay, now granted, he was using Boneheart, and granted, he was also, I'm pretty sure, playing on casual. I don't know if you can do it on veteran, but still, this is a very strong tower. But the fact of the matter is, you guys can see the damage. Everything about this tower is great. I love the design. It's going straight into S tier for me. Next up, we have the Dark Forge. I love this thing. It's like a weaker Tesla, but it can summon a barracks unit. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the overcharged static field ability. But still, it's a pretty good darn tower. The abilities, while moderately expensive, are well worth it, especially if you get Frankenstein, the little Frankenweenie, whatever the heck his name is. I forget his name. But he gets really good upgrades, and he gets to be quite a beefy unit. He can tank Lycans, he can tank Abominations, he can tank all kinds of things, and he deals splash damage once you upgrade his abilities. The tower itself just has a really freaking cool design. I love the little Tesla coils on the two sides here and on top. Overall, this is just a great looking tower. Voice lines are great. I love it. Is it the most broken thing in the world? No, but it is very strong, and for that reason, ladies and gents, we're going to go ahead and put that A tier. Next up, we have the... I forgot the name of this thing. What is this? I guess an Elven Bastion? Gosh, I mean, it's like a shuriken machine gun. So, right, it fires like these shurikens, these three-pointed star blade thingies. It's like a ninja star thingy, whatever. We're going to call it a shuriken machine gun, because that sounds cool. All right, so the shuriken machine guns, they're free. They're given to you in the level. However, they go away after a while, right? So on one of the levels, or I should say one of the waves, excuse me, in the first level of the post-mini campaign for Origins, where you face off against the Gnolls and Bram the Beheader. So I think it's like wave 5. They get rid of this first Bastion. I don't know if the second one stays around or not. I don't believe it does. After a while, I do believe the other one does go away as well. Is it strong? Yeah. From what I've seen, it does deal a decent amount of damage, at least to basic units. But again, obviously, it goes away for a reason after a little while, so I kind of feel like, is it nice to have? Yeah. Is it weak? No. It's definitely not as weak as the Dwarven Barracks Hall or the Legionnaire Archers. I think we're just going to go ahead and put this at C tier. It just does average, but it doesn't even stick around long enough to really be quote-unquote useful, in my opinion. Next up, we have the Elven Barracks Hall. Oh my god. Up to 4 units for 100 gold each, and they each deal 25 to 50 damage. Keep in mind they have a ranged attack too, and that's even stronger. At least it looks stronger. I don't know, maybe I'm just smoking crack or something. The point is they're strong. The design of the tower is kind of a little meh. I feel like they could have done more with the artwork for that, especially since it was the first Kingdom Rush. I get it. You know, you're already trying to throw a lot into a small game. But seriously, this tower is cool. It does great. It performs well. The only problem I have with it is that they're very, very fragile. The elves only have like 100 hit points, no armor. So if they die, you will need to reinvest that gold. But if you can keep barracks or a strong tower in front of them so that they can kind of just support a choke point, they excel at doing that. They can defend multiple lanes at once if they're in range, because they have a good rally point range. Especially in the Silver Oak Forest, and I think there is also a couple of them in the Fungal Forest, if I remember correctly. But it's definitely a tower that you should buy, and it's worth using. I'm going to go ahead and put these at S tier. Next up, we have the Sunray Tower. Ooh, ladies and gents. Ladies and gents, it's kind of like the Elven Barracks Hall, except it's not a barracks, it's an actual, tower. It's a Sunray Tower. So it fires a sunbeam at an enemy. And you can purchase additional sorcerers, up to 4 of them, to increase the damage of the Sunray Tower. And it gets to be quite a bit. So you can kind of solo weaker enemies, and as far as enemies like Dark Slayers are concerned, it's nice to have. The only problem that I have with this tower is that, well, it's only in 1 level. It doesn't kill too many enemies, because considering the enemy variety, right, you've got a lot of big, beefy enemies. That level isn't so much about swarms as it is about just big, beefy enemies. You've got the Yetis, you've got the Winter Wolves, you've got the Troll Chieftains, you've got all these big, beefy brutes. And the Sunray Tower is nice to have, also for the boss as well, but it's kind of just free damage, and I feel like you could honestly do without it. And not the most overpowered thing in the world, but it is still decently strong. I like the design of it, so it does get some points for that. I'm going to go ahead and put it at B tier. Next up, we have the spiders. These guys are glass cannons. Cheap as heck to get. They can slow down the enemy if you purchase the webbing ability, and they can spawn up to 3 spiderlings. What is not to love about this tower? Plus, the design is just freaking amazing. I love it. Again, only in 1 level, so that is unfortunate, but it is in Kingdom Rush Vengeance as a part of the main campaign. I think it's the 2nd level of the 3rd act of the main campaign, if I remember correctly. Very, very strong tower. Is it broken? No. Again, because they're glass cannons, the spiders actually lose their health while they're, just idling around on the battlefield, if I remember correctly. And they will die pretty easily, but they do deal quite a bit of damage, especially against unarmored troops. And even to armored troops, they can still hack away at those pretty well. I would say that this is definitely an A-tier tower. Next up, we have the Buccaneers, or I should say a Scumbar is what this is actually called. I was about to say Buccaneers Hall, but still. So you have pirates that you can purchase that give you additional gold when they're fighting in melee. Or you can purchase the, I really should have written down the names of these things beforehand. But there's a pirate that allows you to throw like these explosive Molotov cocktails, these kegs, and they will deal area damage. They're freaking awesome. And then in the Rising Tides mini campaign with the Deep Devils, you also have the option to purchase boatswains, which are also very, very strong. They're kind of like meaty tank barracks, which just look cool and they sound cool and they're amazing. I love this tower. Very cheap, very well worth using. Would definitely say this is one of the stronger towers in the series. I'm going to go ahead and put this at A tier. Again, they're not broken. They don't have any armor. They just have a decent amount of hit points. They're kind of like the Legionnaires and the Genies in that regard. Very similar, but 2 different playstyles. Next up, we have Sasquatch. Ah, yes. Sasquatch, who deals a measly... I'm just kidding. He's not measly by any means. He does deal good damage, but only against, small, very weak groups of enemies. Honestly, Sasquatch is just not worth the money. He is there to flex. It's not like he's completely useless, but this guy has the worst position for a barracks I've ever seen in my life. I mean, you couldn't have picked a worse spot in that level to put him at. I get that he can cover the front of the map, but seriously, I mean, Jesus Christ, for God's sake, look at this guy. He's frozen in ice. You have to waste your rain of fire on wave 1 just to break him out. And then that's a rain of fire you can't use on that spider matriarch coming out on wave 1 on the bottom. Well, there you go, genius. I like the design and everything. It's just, he's not worth it. We're going to go ahead and put him at D tier. Next up, we have Barisad from Origins. Oh, burn, baby, burn. This guy, whew. He's going to light things up. Welcome to the party, Barisad. You pay this guy some gold, he's just going to freaking fly over the battlefield like America's Air Force and just freaking light it up. Just light up the whole battlefield. Here, just freaking go, baby. This guy is freaking awesome. He's cheap to use, too. Is he worth it? Absolutely. Is he broken, however? Not necessarily. Okay, he does struggle against certain units like Twilight Golems, Heretics. Evokers can heal themselves, and the Scourgers can be a bit of a problem. If you're not careful and you use Barisad at the wrong time, the Scourgers will just all die, disable your towers, and then all the big beefy enemies are going to slip through. Okay, so you do need to be a little bit careful about when you use Barisad, but he's very strong, definitely cheap, definitely worth it in my opinion. He's awesome. Next up, we have the Renegade Post, which you will see in the last level of the main act of the campaign for Kingdom Rush Origins. Abilities allow them to throw 2 daggers instead of 1 on every single attack. They can heal themselves by half the amount of their attack each time they hit an enemy. And then I think there's another one. I forget what it does, but let's just say this barracks is pretty damn strong. Okay? I'm pretty sure these things also have armor too, or if not that, at least a decent amount of hit points. Just very strong. Love the design. Wish we had something more like this kind of just spread throughout the level. I kind of wish during boss fights they gave you more bonus towers like this. Maybe make them a little bit weaker, but give more of them. Quantity over quality in my case. Just to kind of make it the appearance of like an army versus army type deal. I kind of like that idea of having numbers go up against numbers. I feel like that would be really cool. But that's just me. Again, in any case, are these guys broken? No, they actually are very susceptible to certain units and enemies, such as the, what do you call them? What's the name of that Twilight elf that is half elf, half spider that can summon other spiders if they kill a unit? What the heck are they called? You guys know what I'm talking about. I'm putting these guys at B tier. Any case, moving on. The gnomes. I'm sorry. This is like literally one of the dumbest things ever. Again, is it completely useless? No. The design is horrific. I can't stand the voice lines. This thing sucks. All right, we're gonna put it at D tier. The Snapdragons from the Crystal Lake. Hello? Excuse me? What? 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 No. No, 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 no. If I wanted stalling, I'm going to put down barracks. Okay, I'm not going to get some Crystal Dragons and waste this gold. This is the most useless freaking bonus tower I've ever seen in my life. Next up, Young Ashbite from Origins. He's going straight to S tier. This guy is more Chad in this version of Kingdom Rush than he was in Kingdom Rush Frontiers. How sad is it that the baby version of Ashbite is more powerful and deals more damage on each attack than his freaking adult counterpart? Did you just grow old and fat and lazy? Are they showing us the Ashbite when he's like 900 years old and about to die? Oh, here, let's just recruit this dragon because, you know, dragons are OP Chad. And then in Frontiers, he just sucks, but in Origins here, as a bonus tower, he's just like, oh my god. Freaking strong as heck. Love this guy. But I think he has medium armor. He deals, like, I think around 80 to 120-ish damage. It's nuts, okay? And then he can also slow enemies down, deal area damage. It's broken, okay? And it's broken to just unlock this guy and hatch him. He's not even that expensive. If you don't use the dragon, you're just being a goofy. The Ewok Towers. Yeah, totally not a reference to Star Wars Ewoks. So, besides the blatant ripoff, which, not that I mind anyways, I think it's really cool, I hate to say it, these guys are just there. They're kind of cheap like the Elven barracks up here, except they deal like zip, not a goose eggs damage. Feel like you can beat the level without them. We're going to go ahead and put them in D tier. Next up, we have the Griffins. Or at least I think that's what these are. They're like Griffin Riders, whatever the heck. I think they're Griffins. Yeah, they're the Griffins. So, the Griffins deal area damage when they fly over a path, and you click on them, and there's like a little animation where they spew flames down on the path, and they just kill, or at least highly damage a lot of the enemies in sight. The only problem is, you have to wait for them to kind of recharge and reappear. Personally, am I the biggest fan of these guys? Half the freaking time I forget to use them anyways. I just forget that they're there. I'm just so concentrated on the level. But they are very useful. Slow recharge, but I feel like, again, if they weren't there, we could probably beat the level without them. I'm going to put them in C tier. Because they're not completely useless. They're not the best. They're not the worst. But they are somewhat useful. Last on the chopping block, ladies and gents, from Kingdom Rush Vengeance in the Lightseeker Camp level, we have the Bandits Caravan. So you can purchase groups of bandits. These guys suck. Why are you paying gold for 2 to 3 units? The Raiders are atrociously underpowered in this version. The Marauders are atrociously underpowered in this version. Like, if they kept their original stats, but they stayed as long as they did on the battlefield, and maybe they cost a little bit more gold, that I could understand being like a well-balanced tower. But this, no. This is like horrific, hugest waste of money in my life that I've ever seen. This thing is going straight to F tier. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comment section below if you agree or disagree with any of these placements, and I will see you all in the next YouTube video. Peace out.